And an update coming in on the IPL fixing and betting scandal. N. Srinivasan's last throw of the dice to protect his chair. Srinivasan has told the Supreme Court that if he is allowed to contest and then be elected as BCCI President, he will not attend any IPL governing meetings. Now, his lawyer Kapil Sibal says he has been given an undertaking that if he is chosen as President of the BCCI till the time that the conflict of interest inquiry is complete, he will not associate himself with the BCCI working committee and the IPL governing meetings. Shisha and Boria joining us live. Shisha, let me come to you first. Shisha, this comes after the Supreme Court's observation yesterday that he should choose between the BCCI presidency and his company, India Cements, which is the own franchise of CSK. So really over here, Srinivasan, as we saw yesterday, there has been a softening of his stand, considering there has been a fair amount of air of defiance that, he has surrounded himself with. But yesterday, he admitted to his mistakes about him attending the meetings, despite stepping aside as president. And even here today, sort of reassuring the court that he will not be attending these meetings, even if he is elected president.
Well, exactly. You see, when we take this into consideration, because remember the entire controversy when it broke out a year and a half back, and since then he has been saying that, he is sticking on to his position, saying that he will not keep away from the BCCI, and he has not done nothing wrong, though he has admitted few things in this current case where the proceedings are on, especially on the conflict of interest inquiry. But yes, now his lawyer Kapil Sibal coming out and saying that he will not attend any IPL governing meetings, and also will keep himself away from the BCCI, I think, until and unless all the proceedings are over. But yes, there are very few options left before N. Srinivasan at this point in time. One, yes, as far as CSK is also concerned, he have to decide between BCCI and CSK, because as in CSK being said so, he has been maintaining this that he has not done anything wrong, and Gurunath Mayappan, his son-in-law, though there is of course a conflict of interest where that is what we have been talking about. That one thing that is what is the point of consideration here. Yes, of course, on the other grounds as well, where when we take the entire matter, selling the stakes of the CSK, that can be one option that's left before N. Srinivasan. But
right.
The next big question is, will he do so? The next also will be to proceed with the BCCI elections, as he plead to the Supreme Court, asking him to attend this BCCI elections, and also he will keep away from the entire proceedings until and unless there is a quantum of punishment that's been spread out for Gurunath Mayappan. So all these things into consideration, yes, Srinivasan remaining very different. He is of course in a very tight spot to choose between BCCI and the CSK. Sanjana.
Boria, let me come to you. This is turning into a probe that seems almost never ending, because Srinivasan earlier wanted a new panel to look into the matters of conflict of interest. It is after that the panel clears him, that he will assume his full set of responsibilities as BCCI president. Until that point, he's claiming that he's not going to attend any IPL governing council meetings or working committee meetings. So clearly, I don't think he's in a position here to actually make these kind of demands. But would you agree? Would you agree with the fact that there has been a sort of step down where he is a little on the back foot, considering throughout this time he's got this air of arrogance about it, where he's adamant on being president, adamant on still heading the entire thing?
See, most importantly, he's agreeing to being probed. That is point number one. You have to accept what he's now saying is, let there be a probe against me. Whether it is for conflict of interest, whether it is for cover-up, let there be a committee. Till the time that committee clears me, I will stay away. So for the first time, he has always said, I am not being investigated. If you see his statements, Mr. Srinivasan's statements, that's what he has always said. Now he is conceding to the fact that let there be a probe. Now, what is the underlying assumption here? You should read between the lines. It's basically saying, let there be status quo. At the moment, what is the situation? He is an elected president of BCCI. No one is taking that away from him. But he is president in exile. Technically, he cannot attend meetings. He has flouted that and attended meetings, for which he has apologized. So technically, he is already president of BCCI in exile. That's exactly what he's saying. That if I am elected, I will not attend BCCI meetings. I will not attend IPL meetings. So this status quo, which is currently prevailing, should continue. That's exactly what the situation is at this point in time. Whether or not the Supreme Court accepts that, whether or not the petitioners accept that is a different proposition. But if you try to understand Mr. Srinivasan's point of view, that's what it is. More importantly, we just got an update which says, will there be an outside committee or will there be an inside committee to probe these matters? Now, if there is an outside committee, the BCCI is fearing that its autonomy might get affected.
Absolutely.
That for me is far more significant. And will the findings of this committee be binding on the board or not? Suppose the committee recommends termination. Will the board say yes to that, or will the board fight it? What will the SC say on that matter, Sanjana, will perhaps decide the outcome of this case.
Absolutely. Let me also quickly go across to Radhika. Radhika, you're joining us from outside the Supreme Court. If you can actually just give us an idea of what exactly happened inside court, because we understand, as Boria has very pertinently raised this point, but we just recently got this update saying that the board does not want outsiders poking around. The Supreme Court is reassured that the committee will be made up of BCCI members, but ones appointed by the Supreme Court and not the BCCI. If you can just shed more light on that, Radhika, what happened in court?
Yes, Sanjana, today morning, once the proceedings started at around 10:30, closing arguments were presented by Srinivasan's counsel, that is Kapil Sibal, and that is when he brought up the issue of the undertaking as well, wherein he said that Srinivasan, if allowed to contest and elected, will stay away from IPL-related issues till the probe into the IPL spot-fixing scandal is over. Now, as far as the constitution of the committee is concerned, the options that were given by Kapil Sibal yesterday to the Supreme Court, one of them was primarily that the Supreme Court appoints a body that investigates the issue, which comprises of members of the IPL Governing Council and the BCCI Governing Council as well. Now, if the Supreme Court does take up that issue, remember earlier also Supreme Court had said that they will let BCCI take action as far as CSK is also concerned. So Supreme Court has assured BCCI earlier also that they do not want to infringe on the autonomy of the body, since that is a very crucial element, something that was opposed by various other federations as well, considering their association with the international federations, that the autonomy of the federation in their respective countries should not be questioned. So that is something that the Supreme Court has assured them. How does the BCCI take it further? We've heard various other councils as well. We had India Cements Council speak in the court as well. We've had BCCI Council speak in the court as well. Closing arguments just before lunch are taking place. We will see how the court reacts to this undertaking. We do know that obviously the petitioners' lawyers will also react on this. All that hasn't happened at the moment. This has been put up in front of the two-judge bench. They haven't passed on a judgment on it. They haven't reacted on it. But at the moment, this is the status quo, that all the councils are presenting their closing arguments on the side.
Right, we understand that each side is going to be, given their allotted time, Rasesh. But what happens to the options? What happens to the options yesterday that were presented? Rasesh, if you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. As Radhika has been, sort of enunciating what exactly took place in court today, talking about what each party, each side is, expressing their stand, I wanted to come to you and ask you what happens now to the options that were presented in court yesterday. What comes of them right now?
Look, it's understandable, Sanjana, that Mr. Srinivasan's come up with this undertaking. All along in the course of the hearing yesterday, their argument was that he be allowed to recontest, and he's had to concede that he'll have to be probed by an external committee. That is something that is understood and on an expected lines. We'll wait and see how the Supreme Court reacts to it, if that undertaking is taken at face value. But I think the other point that has been made by the Supreme Court by the BCCI during the course of the hearings today about that independent body submitting its report to the working committee, but the BCCI working committee taking a final call, citing that this might obstruct their autonomy, is something that we'll have to read between the lines. One can see where the BCCI is coming from. All along, history suggests that the BCCI has not been kind to any sort of obstruction from outside. They've been very comfortable within the corridors of power with the majority that the ruling party has all along enjoyed. Be it the new sports law coming into place, be it BCCI coming under RBI ambit, RTI ambit, they've always opposed that, and I think the BCCI wants that autonomy to be maintained, and it's very critical how the Supreme Court reacts to this, because any ruling here may have a ramification on how the future course of actions could proceed as far as such issues are concerned.
But Boria, we have in fact been talking about the BCCI expressing reservations regarding the forming of this two-member high-power committee, which will have judges from the outside. Why do you think, of course, they may claim that it may affect the autonomy of the body itself, but what do you think is perhaps the BCCI's real concern here, saying that they may give recommendations to the working committee, but it should not be binding?
See, if the two-member committee, I mean, this is hypothetical conjecture, I mean, so we should make that very clear. And we shouldn't speculate. But if a committee like that is appointed and if the committee recommends termination of a particular franchise, what do you do? So do you go ahead and accept it? If the committee recommends amendment of the Constitution 6.2.4 and says that, okay, there is a case of conflict of interest, this part of the Constitution should be amended, what do you do? Do you go ahead and accept it? As Rashesh was rightly saying there, that the BCCI is a very closed body. The BCCI governs Indian cricket with an iron hand. The BCCI would not want any kind of outside interference monitored by anybody that might affect its autonomy. And actually, the appointment of this a high-powered committee, which is directly appointed by the Supreme Court with such powers, can in fact do that. So one can understand the sense of discomfort on the part of the BCCI here. But this is the Supreme Court. Will the Supreme Court agree to this? Because for the last 1.5 years, what the BCCI is recommending here, that Mr. Srinivasan will stay away, that was done. Mr. Srinivasan has been staying away from the affairs of the BCCI for the longest time. From March of this year, when the Supreme Court passed this ruling that he should be president in exile, he has been president in exile. But the case has not been sorted. Punishment has not been meted out. The BCCI has been only inactive despite the Mudgal committee submitting its report on the 1st of November or the 2nd of November. Till today, no action from the BCCI. So the recommendation that the board has given or the suggestion that the board has given is already in place. This is not a new suggestion. So whether or not the Supreme Court accepts that is the question. For me, the more fundamental point is, will the Supreme Court appoint a committee now? That will then be binding on the board. Or will the Supreme Court appointed committee's recommendations will be in the nature of recommendations? Because if it is in the nature of recommendations, the BCCI will be in a position to oppose them. If it's binding, then it's a fundamentally different matter, and then the BCCI's autonomy obviously will be at stake, and several key interests. If the Constitution is asked to be amended, what happens? Mr. Srinivasan is saying, I will stay away from IPL. Does that mean he will give up stake in Chennai Super Kings? Because obviously Chennai Super Kings will be part of IPL.
Absolutely.
And as owner of Chennai Super Kings, in an inadvertent way, he is also part of IPL. Does it mean that he will step down from the managing director of India Cements? India Cements owns Chennai Super Kings. Now, if he is part of India Cements, in a different route, he is also part of IPL.
Absolutely.
By staying away from IPL meetings or BCCI working committee meetings, how much does that solve the problem?
Boria Majumdar, our consulting editor, sports, Srisha Reddy, Radhika joining us from outside the Supreme Court, and Rasesh joining us from Mumbai. Thank you so much for bringing us those updates, but stay with us. Stay with us. We'll come back to the story. We'll be tracking the story as, remember, the hearing resumed in court today. Crucial development taking place in Supreme Court. Remember, this is as the IPL hearing resumed, with the BCCI expressing reservations regarding the forming of the two-member high-power committee. I'm joined once again with Boria Majumdar, our consulting editor, sports, and Rasesh Mandani joining us from Mumbai. Rasesh, let me come to you first. The BCCI upset that this committee may affect the autonomy, and the BCCI said that they may give recommendations to the working committee, but it should not be binding. So to this, the court said that the proposed committee recommendations would make own rules of their BCCI more effective, with people being nominated by the court. How do you see that panning out now?
Look, I think that's one thing that Mr. Srinivasan, the president in exile of the BCCI, has to concede, that he would have to be under probe. The undertaking where he said that if elected, he would stay away from IPL meetings, BCCI working committee meetings is fine, so long as the high-powered committee, which could be set up, investigates the Mudgal committee findings further. That is something that he's had to concede. But the other argument that the BCCI has put forth, where said that if there is a high committee, external high member committee appointed who looks into Mudgal committee findings, then those those should be in the form of recommendations, and they should be submitted to the BCCI working committee, who would then in turn make the final decision. Presents to us the discomfort that the BCCI members may be feeling as far as those recommendations are concerned as well. We know that internally Mr. Srinivasan knows, the current ruling group knows that they got the numbers, and just to give an example, Justice Mudgal committee was appointed by the Supreme Court. He came up with this extensive inquiry, and one of his inferences was, while he did say that Mr. Srinivasan was not involved in a cover-up, he did point out an administrative misdemeanor to an event that happened a few years ago. How did the BCCI react to it? They said that it was a minor matter and that the due course of action was followed. They laid the blame on the then BCCI president. So this is a position that the BCCI understands, that if there is an external committee which comes up and gives out recommendations which is appointed by the Supreme Court, then those recommendations could be harsh. Under their ambit would also be the conflict of interest issue, which may have a direct impact on Mr. Srinivasan as well. So one can understand why the BCCI is opposed to this idea of that external committee making those findings binding on the BCCI.
Boria, do you feel that in a lot of ways the BCCI and Srinivasan, as we have been reporting and discussing heavily yesterday, about how there is a marked difference with the fact that Sibal is actually the counsel for Srinivasan and not the BCCI. But do you think that the two are still looking out for each other, that there are, they're attempting to back each other up as much as possible?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And there's no fault in it. I mean, if obviously it's sort of the BCCI wants Mr. Srinivasan to be reinstated. Question is, will the SC buy that? Question is what Rashesh was saying. Because look, how many probes will there be? I mean, this committee that will now be appointed, Sanjana, what will the committee probe? Is it probing conflict of interest? If it is probing conflict of interest, well and good. Because that was not part of the Mudgal committee's terms of reference. But what else is it probing? Is it going to probe Gurunath again? Gurunath has been probed. If the BCCI is saying that let there be suggestions, the Mudgal committee report 1, Mudgal committee report 2, what are they? They are suggestions. Gurunath is involved in betting. Gurunath is indicted in betting. This is a suggestion, this is a probe that has already been done. So technically, the suggestion is already on the table. This man is guilty. Why don't you punish him? Then what has the BCCI done? The BCCI has said Sundaraman is free. Sundaraman has no problem. Raj Kundra has no problem. Gurunath Mayappan, okay, a criminal case is going on. The only attempt from the BCCI has been to say, oh, some case is going on, it's all sub judice. We will not take any action. We will wait. So it's an effort. In effect, it is an attempt to remain inactive and deflect blame. That is where the BCCI is now alarmed, that if there is an external committee whose suggestions become binding, then the board will have to act. Irrespective of whether the board wants or not, it will have to act. If the committee recommends X is guilty of conflict of interest, X should resign, so and so will have to resign. Take Mr. Srinivasan's case. If Mr. Srinivasan is elected and the committee finds that Mr. Srinivasan is guilty of conflict of interest, will Mr. Srinivasan resign? If it is binding, he will have to resign. If it is in the nature of suggestions, he will say, no, I will not resign. It's as simple as that. So now the case is, will the Supreme Court agree to what the BCCI's counsel said and make it in the name of the nature of suggestions, or will this be binding? If it is binding, automatically the BCCI will be alarmed at the findings.
Right, Radhika, let me come to you. Radhika, yesterday the Supreme Court had presented a list of options before Srinivasan. For our viewers, if you can actually enunciate and tell us what those options were. And here the BCCI expressing their reservations over one of those options. Can we have an understanding of what their stands are, on the other options, and what's going to happen post the lunch session in court again?
Sanjana, as far as yesterday's hearing go, when Kapil Sibal started talking about trying to prove that there was no conflict of interest, he said that Srinivasan had been running the BCCI for a very long time and no questions had been raised till now. That is when the Supreme Court had said that they feel that since Srinivasan wears so many hats, he's the president of the BCCI, he owns India Cements, which owns Chennai Super Kings, it is very difficult for them to digest that there is no conflict of interest. So the Supreme Court very clearly before lunch yesterday said that they feel that the best course of action would be that the BCCI holds the elections on 17th minus N. Srinivasan. They also went ahead and told Srinivasan's counsel Kapil Sibal that if there are any other options that they feel are better than this, they should be presented to them. That is when in the afternoon session yesterday, Kapil Sibal came up with 5 different options, out of which the last 2 were that either Mudgal committee comes up, conducts a probe, or the Supreme Court themselves appoints a committee. The other three options were something that had been exercised by the BCCI in the past, where the BCCI and the IPL Governing Council form committees and probe the entire matter. Now, the SC said very clearly yesterday also that they feel that an independent, as long as Srinivasan is at the helm of the BCCI, they do not feel that an independent probe can happen, a fair trial can happen. That is exactly what happened today as well, even though Srinivasan has submitted an affidavit saying that has given an undertaking to the Supreme Court that he will stay away from IPL. The Supreme Court still doesn't really seem convinced. They once again pointed out in today's hearings that they feel that for the past month, when the hearings been going on and the conflict of interest issue has been raised for so long, what has the BCCI done till now?
Right.
That is what the Supreme Court said today as well. They pulled up the BCCI, so they feel that if this committee, if these group of people continue to rule the BCCI, they do not feel that a fair probe in the IPL spot fixing scandal can happen, Sanjana.
Absolutely. Radhika bringing us that update. This is the latest update. The Supreme Court pulling up the BCCI for not addressing the issue of conflict of interest, asking for how many months is this issue waging in court, and asking the BCCI and Srinivasan, have you put your head together and done anything? To which the Supreme Court said, reposing the faith of cricket lovers is most important, and it is their confidence which needs to be restored, and if they think that all they see are your fake business models, it will collapse. Let me quickly go across to Shrisha. Shrisha, coming to you, you know, we have the option here before Srinivasan where it's either his presidency or then his stake in the IPL. What's the sense you're getting like from there, from the Srinivasan camp? What way is he veering towards? It's difficult to sort of assume or speculate, as you know, we're definitely trying to avoid, but hypothetically, what is the sense you're getting from the Srinivasan camp?
Well, Sanjana, as Radhika was clearly pointing out that, the court has pulled up BCCI for this undertaking that he will not be at the helm of affairs, that he will keep himself away from all the BCCI matters. But on the other hand, what you have to take into consideration is that the same thing happened last time as well, when Srinivasan was forced to, resign, but he said that he would step aside, and that's when Jagmohan Dalmia took over as the interim chief of the BCCI. And even then, and now, he was attending all the BCCI meetings as the president of the Tamil Nadu Cricket Association. So that is one thing that court is looking into. But on the other hand, Srinivasan's camp has remained very different. They have been telling us that Srinivasan does not want to let go BCCI, and also CSK having said that the stake that the India Cements, he is the chairperson of the India Cements, and the stakes are in the CSK. So that is one thing that what Srinivasan has been sticking on to. One have to wait to know